In the lower right drawer of the desk where I have worked for the last 16 years, on the third floor of the Department of Public Health building on Maple Avenue in downtown Los Angeles, there is a brown manila envelope. On the front of the envelope, in my handwriting, in black marker, are 4 words. Aunt Naomi, original proof. Inside the envelope is a paper death certificate, the standard form that the state of California issues for every death recorded in the county of Los Angeles. It is the form known as Vital Statistics Form Number 9. The file number on this particular certificate is 2018-LA-007-2941. The date of indexing in the lower right margin is the 16th of March, 2018. The initials of the indexing clerk are MTB. Those are my initials. I signed that certificate on a Friday morning in March of 2018 in the records office where I have worked since 2010, and I placed it in the permanent index of deaths recorded in the county of Los Angeles. The name on the certificate is Naomi Pearl Tilford-Branham. She was my father's older sister. She raised me in the same way she raised my father before me, which is to say she was the third parent in our family in everything but the strict legal definition of that word. She died at the age of 73 at Centinela Hospital in Inglewood, California, on the 14th of March, 2018, of congestive heart failure. She had been a widow since 1971, when her husband Earl was killed in the Mekong Delta as a young infantryman. She never had children of her own. She fed me lunch in the cafeteria of Crenshaw Middle School every weekday for 3 years because she ran that cafeteria, and because I was her brother's son, and because that is what she did. There is no version of who I am that does not begin with her. 6 years and 8 months after I signed her death certificate, on a Tuesday morning in the second week of November of 2024, I was running a routine cross-match against the Federal Social Security Death Master File. The Death Master File is a public record. The Social Security Administration publishes it. We use it in vital records work as a check because sometimes a death is reported to the federal system before the state system catches up, and sometimes the other way around. And the gap between those two systems is the kind of gap that an indexing clerk like me is supposed to watch. I had been running this cross-match on my own time for 14 years, since the day my predecessor handed me the office key on his retirement day in 2010 and told me to watch the gap. I was not assigned to do this work. There is no line item in my job description for it. Nobody at the Department of Public Health asked me to do it. I did it anyway, because Carlos Trigon Young had told me to, and because I had come to believe, over 14 years of doing it, that he had been right. That morning, on the second screen of my workstation, I saw my aunt's name. It was on a list of beneficiaries enrolled in Medi-Cal, the Medicaid program of the state of California, who were currently being billed for hospice services at a small storefront facility in Inglewood called Cedar Grove Hospice Care, LLC. The billed amount for the month of October of 2024 was $4,300. The enrollment date was the 2nd of August, 2024. The address listed for my aunt as her place of residence was an apartment building on La Brea Avenue that I had never heard of before, and that I confirmed, by checking the county assessor's records, my aunt had never lived in. The Social Security number on the Medi-Cal enrollment matched the Social Security number on the death certificate I had signed in March of 2018. I pulled the original paper certificate from the file room. I laid it on my desk. I laid the printout of the Medi-Cal enrollment beside it. They were the same person. The same name, the same date of birth, the same 9-digit number issued to her by the federal government in 1945 when she was a 1-year-old child in Greenwood, Mississippi, before her family moved to South Los Angeles. One document recorded that she had stopped breathing on the 14th of March, 2018. The other document recorded that she was alive, in an apartment on La Brea, receiving $4,300 worth of end-of-life care in October of 2024. I sat at my desk for a long time. I do not remember exactly how long. The clock on my wall is one of the round kind, with the second hand that ticks audibly. I remember hearing the second hand. I do not remember moving until the office assistant, a young woman named Joelle, put a cup of coffee on my desk and said, "Mr. Tilford-Branham, are you all right?" I said, "I am all right, Joelle. Thank you for the coffee." She walked away. I drank the coffee. Then I closed the file folder containing my aunt's certificate, and I closed the printout, and I put both of them in the lower right drawer of my desk, and I closed the drawer. That was a Tuesday. By the following Tuesday, I had 847 names. Here is what happened next. My name is Marcus Tilford-Branham. I am 47 years old. I work for the County of Los Angeles in the Vital Records Office of the Department of Public Health. I file deaths. That is my job description. There is more to it than that. And I'm going to tell you what the more is. Because the more is the reason that the state of California stopped paying $4,300 a month in April of 2026 for hospice care for my aunt Naomi Pearl Tilford-Branham, who has been resting at Inglewood Park Cemetery since the spring of 2018, and for 846 other people whose names I will not say here because their families do not need to hear those names from me, but whose names came back to silence at the same time. This story takes place between November of 2024 and April of 2026. It is 16 months long. Most of those 16 months consisted of doing nothing visible. The visible part took about 2 weeks. The visible part is what made the newspapers. The invisible part is what this story is about. Act 2. Crenshaw, 1962. I'm going to start in 1962 because that is when my father, Calvin Tilford-Branham, arrived in Los Angeles from Greenwood, Mississippi on a Greyhound bus, 20 years old, with one cardboard suitcase. His older sister Naomi Pearl had come west 10 years earlier with her new husband Earl Tilford, who had been stationed at March Air Force Base during his Korean War enlistment. Naomi and Earl lived in a 2-bedroom house on 83rd Street they had bought with a Veterans Administration loan. Naomi worked in the cafeteria of an Inglewood elementary school. Earl worked at a furniture warehouse in Vernon. When my father arrived, he stayed in their back room for 11 months, and Naomi made him a place to land in California. He took a job with the Los Angeles Metropolitan Transit Authority as a maintenance helper and worked in that yard for 41 years, retiring in 2007. He still lives in the Crenshaw house he bought with my mother in 1971. My mother, Lurleen Branham Powell, was a Crenshaw-born elementary school teacher who taught at Inglewood schools for 38 years. She is 76 now. They have been in that house for 55 years. Earl Tilford was killed on the 3rd of August 1971 in Quang Tin Province in the Republic of Vietnam. He was 36. He had volunteered for the Army in 1969 after a layoff at the furniture warehouse. He was a sergeant. He was awarded the Bronze Star posthumously. The flag that draped his coffin at the funeral at Inglewood Park Cemetery in October of 1971 is folded in a wooden case on the mantel of the house I now live in. Naomi was 27 when Earl was killed. She was childless. She did not remarry. She lived for the next 47 years alone, kept her cafeteria job for 40 years, retired with a pension in 2009, moved to a small bungalow in View Park, Windsor Hills in 2012, and left that bungalow to me in her will when she died in 2018, on the condition that I take care of the camellias she had planted in the front yard. I have taken care of the camellias for 6 years. 3 have died, 4 are still alive. They have not bloomed this season yet. I tell you all of this because it is the load-bearing wall of what comes next. When I sat at my desk on a Tuesday morning in November of 2024, looking at my aunt's name on a Medi-Cal hospice billing roster, what was in front of me was not an abstract statistical pattern. What was in front of me was the woman who had given my father the back room of her house in 1962 so that he had a place to land in California, who had carried me on her hip through the Inglewood school cafeteria when I was 3, who had sat at the kitchen table with my mother the year my brother was stillborn at Centinela and held my mother's hand for an hour without speaking, who had attended every graduation, every wedding, every baptism, who had cooked Thanksgiving for 46 years. That was the woman whose name I was looking at, on a roster that said she was alive in an apartment on La Brea Avenue, a 5-minute drive from the cemetery where I had stood on a March afternoon in 2018 and watched her be lowered into the ground beside the husband who had been waiting for her there since 1971. That is the household. That is what was on my desk. Now I will tell you what I did. Act 3, the Coroner's Office. I spent 7 years at the Los Angeles County Department of Coroner before I came to Vital Records. I started in September of 2003 at 26, after 2 years as a clerk at the Sheriff's Department. The County of Los Angeles records between 9 and 10,000 investigated deaths a year, the kinds that require medical examiner attention. The records clerks process all the paperwork. We log the bodies. We track the autopsies. We coordinate with the next of kin and the funeral homes and the law enforcement agencies. We do this in a building on North Mission Road in Boyle Heights that smells, on a hot August afternoon, in a way you do not forget. My supervisor for those 7 years was a woman named Rosaria Cortez Pham. She trained me from the day I started. She taught me how to read a toxicology report. She taught me how to talk to a family member who has just learned that their father did not die of a heart attack, but had in fact been beaten to death in his apartment in Hawthorne 3 days before anyone noticed. She taught me, in short, how to handle the dead with attention. The dead are not abstractions. They are people who, until very recently, were doing whatever it is that people do, and who now require somebody to take care of the paperwork that documents they have stopped. Rosaria retired in March of 2010. After her lunch in the second-floor conference room, she pulled me aside in the parking lot. She said, "Marcus, you have a good eye. You should leave. The coroner's office will be here if you want to come back, but you are starting to look at the bodies the way I started to look at them in 1987, which is the year I almost left and went to work for an insurance company. There is an opening at Vital Records, Department of Public Health. The supervisor over there is Carlos Tragon Young. He is going to retire in a year. They are going to need someone good. I am going to call him tomorrow and tell him you are coming." I went to the interview. I was hired. I started in June. Carlos Tragon Young trained me for 90 days. On the morning of his last day in the office, the 5th of August 2010, he came to my desk at 8 in the morning, sat down in the chair beside me, and set a small brass keychain with a single key on the desk between us. He said, "Marcus, this is the key to the record storage room on the floor below us. There are about 300,000 paper death certificates in that room, going back to 1924. I'm giving it to you because nobody else in this office wants the key. They use the electronic system. The electronic system is reliable, but the electronic system is the rumor. The paper file is the truth. The death certificate we sign is the only place in any government system in this state where the official, irrevocable, permanent fact of a person's death is recorded. Everything downstream of us, every payment, every benefit, every probate, every Medi-Cal enrollment, every insurance claim, runs off of our index. If our index is wrong, then everything downstream of us is wrong." He picked up the keychain. He handed it to me. He said, "Marcus, I want you to remember one thing after I leave. The death index is the truth. The Medi-Cal enrollment system, the Social Security retirement system, the bank accounts, the credit reports, the insurance policies, are all the rumor. The gap between them is where the money lives. Nobody in this department is going to ask you to look at the gap. Nobody at the state is going to ask you to look at the gap. Watch the gap, son. Do not tell the supervisor. Do not put it on a form. Just keep an eye on it. If you watch the gap for 30 years, you will see things nobody else in this building will ever see. The job is not the form. The form is the visible part. The job is the watching. Now take the key. Tomorrow, you are the senior clerk." He stood up. He shook my hand. He walked out. I never saw him again. He died of pancreatic cancer in February of 2014. His widow gave me a small framed photograph of him at his desk in 1990, which I keep on the bookcase behind my desk to this day. For the next 14 years, from August of 2010 until November of 2024, I watched the gap. I ran a quarterly cross-match against the Social Security Death Master File and the California Medi-Cal Enrollment File, on my own time, on weekends, on a personal laptop kept locked in a fireproof box at my house. I did not tell my supervisor. I did not put it on a form. The gap was, for 14 years, mostly small. There were always anomalies. Most were data entry errors that resolved within a quarter as the systems caught up to each other. A small number, perhaps 15 or 20 a year out of the roughly 70,000 deaths the county records annually, were genuine cases of post-mortem fraud, usually a family member continuing to draw a benefit on a deceased relative's account. Those I referred quietly through informal channels to the Medi-Cal Program Integrity Division, and they were generally handled within 6 months. The gap was manageable. Then, in November of 2024, it stopped being manageable. Act 4. The Vital Records Office. The Vital Records Office occupies the eastern half of the 3rd floor of the Department of Public Health building on Maple Avenue in downtown Los Angeles. It has 3 rooms: a public lobby where members of the public request certified copies, an indexing office with 12 cubicles where the senior clerks like me work, and a paper archive annex, the room Carlos gave me the key to in 2010, with rows of green painted metal cabinets holding 330,000 paper death certificates going back to 1924. There are 11 other senior clerks in the indexing office. The most senior has been here 31 years. We do not talk much during the workday. The work itself is solitary, requires concentration, and produces a culture in which sustained quietness is normal and welcome. The supervisor of the Vital Records Office since 2019 has been Renata Polina Chervinsky-Amati. She is 56. She holds a doctorate in epidemiology from UCLA. Her father immigrated from Krakow, her mother from Tehran. She joined the Department of Public Health in 1998 as an epidemiologist and worked her way up through communicable disease control, maternal and child health, and regional epidemiology before becoming bureau chief in 2019. She is, in the 5 years she has supervised me, a thoughtful and careful manager. She defends her staff in budget meetings. She does not micromanage. She is also an institutional purist of the most principled and least flexible kind I have ever encountered. She believes the Vital Records Office exists to do one thing, which is to file births and deaths exactly, completely, and permanently. And that any expansion of that mission, even toward the kind of cross-system anomaly work I have done quietly for 14 years, is a threat to the integrity of the index itself. I will give you her reasoning in her own words in the next act. I have lived for 19 years with Eurydia Esparza Tilford, who goes by Yuri, an oncology nurse at Cedars-Sinai for 16 years. Our daughters are Imani, 16, a junior at Crenshaw High and on the debate team, and Adeze, 13, 8th grade at Audubon Middle School, alto saxophone in the school jazz band. We live in the bungalow at View Park, Windsor Hills I inherited from Aunt Naomi. The kitchen still has the butter yellow walls she painted in 1974. The rooster-shaped salt shaker on the counter is still on the counter. We have not changed what did not need changing. That is the household I came home to on the evening of November 12, 2024, the day I saw my aunt's name on the Medi-Cal Hospice billing roster. Act 5, November morning. It was a Tuesday. I had arrived at the Vital Records Office at 7:45. I had a cup of coffee. I logged into my workstation. The first thing I do every Tuesday and every Friday morning is run the cross-match query. It takes about 45 minutes to complete on the county network. I started it at 7:52 and went to process the overnight referrals while it ran. I came back to my desk at 8:41. The query had completed at 8:37. I opened the result file. It was a tab-delimited text export with 3 columns: Social Security number with the last 4 digits redacted, name of the index decedent, and name of the Medi-Cal enrolled provider actively billing on behalf of that account. The results that morning had 341 rows. Most Tuesdays, the result had between 80 and 120 rows. 341 was the highest cross-match count I had ever seen in 14 years. I scrolled. Most of them were the routine data quality issues I was used to, recently reported deaths whose enrollment files had not yet caught up. The lag is usually under 30 days, but scattered through the 341 rows were entries that were not recent. Deaths from 2018, 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, still appearing as actively billed Medi-Cal accounts. Of the older entries, almost all were associated with a small set of provider names, and almost all of those provider names were hospice agencies in Los Angeles County. I sorted by provider name. The names clustered. Cedar Grove Hospice Care LLC, Linden Hill Hospice Services LLC, Sycamore Vista Hospice Group LLC, Magnolia Path Palliative Care LLC. 11 botanical or Vista brand names formed in the same 8-month window. 3 additional names that did not fit the botanical pattern but shared 2 of the same zip codes. 14 provider names total, all formed as LLCs with the California Secretary of State between October of 2022 and August of 2023. 11 shared an agent for service of process at the same Glendale address. 3 shared a different agent at a Pasadena address. The dates of formation fell into a tight pattern. They were not random. Somebody had built 14 hospice corporations in 10 months and had started enrolling the Social Security numbers of dead people into Medi-Cal through them. At about 9:15, I noticed my aunt's name in the result file. Row 233. The provider was Cedar Grove Hospice Care LLC. The billing amount was $4,300 for October 2024. The enrollment date was the 2nd of August. I went down to the paper archive annex. I pulled her original 2018 death certificate, file number 2018-LA-0072941, signed MTB. I carried it upstairs. I laid it beside the printed enrollment record. They were the same person, same Social Security number, same date of birth, October 7th, 1944. Same name, Naomi Pearl Tilford-Branham. One document said she had stopped breathing 6.5 years earlier. The other said she was alive in an apartment on La Brea Avenue receiving end-of-life care. I noticed I was not breathing. I made myself breathe. I drank water. I stared at the 2 documents for what was probably 4 minutes. I closed both into a single manila folder. I labeled it Aunt Naomi Crossmatch, November 12. I placed it in the lower right drawer. I sent a brief email to Renata's assistant requesting a 15-minute meeting at her earliest convenience. I went back to the indexing queue. I processed deaths the rest of the day. I went home. Act 6. Coffee in the break room. Renata's assistant scheduled the meeting for the following Thursday afternoon, the 14th of November, at 3:15, in the 3rd floor break room rather than in Renata's office, because Renata was hosting an external visitor in her office until 3:30, and she wanted to begin the meeting on time. The break room was empty when I arrived at 3:12. Renata arrived at 3:15 exactly. She had a folder under her arm. She set the folder on the table between us and sat down opposite me. She said, "Marcus, what is on your mind?" I had brought the Aunt Naomi Crossmatch November 12 folder with me. I opened it. I laid the death certificate and the Medi-Cal enrollment printout side by side facing her. I told her the story in 2 minutes. Tuesday morning crossmatch, 341 rows. 14 hospice LLCs in 6 zip codes. 800 plus active billed accounts on deceased Social Security numbers. My aunt at row 233. The same date of birth. The same 9-digit number. The bungalow on La Brea Avenue she had never set foot in. $4,300 for October. Renata listened without interrupting. When I finished, she did not speak for 30 seconds. She picked up the death certificate. She read the file number. She read the date of indexing. She read the initials in the lower right margin. She set the certificate down. She picked up the enrollment printout. She read the provider name. She read the billed amount. She read the enrollment date. She set the printout down. She folded her hands. She said, "Marcus, I am so sorry about your aunt. I want you to know that." She paused. She said, "But the answer to this is not vital records. The answer to this is the Medi-Cal Program Integrity Division at the Department of Healthcare Services in Sacramento. They have a fraud referral intake process. There is a form. I can have my assistant pull it up for you within the hour. You fill it out. You submit it. They will respond to you within a defined timeline. That is the correct path." I said, "Renata, I have looked at their intake process. It says 90 days for an initial response. They are buried. There is a backlog of probably a year. By the time someone at DHCS looks at this, the ring will have billed another $40 million, and another 600 dead people will be on their books." Renata said, "Marcus, I hear you, and I'm going to ask you to do the hard thing here, which is to send the referral and let the system work. The Vital Records Office cannot become a fraud detection arm. The moment we become a fraud detection arm, the integrity of our index is compromised. People will start asking us to leave names off the index, or to add names to the index, or to backdate names, or to investigate names that someone in another department wants investigated for reasons that have nothing to do with whether a person actually died. Our integrity is our narrowness. Our integrity is the fact that we do one thing and we do it exactly. The moment we expand, even for the best of reasons, even for a personal family case like yours, we lose the only thing that makes us worth having. Send the referral. Send the file. If you want to attach a personal cover letter explaining the family connection, do that. But the path is the path. We are not the right office for this. I am sorry. I know that is not what you wanted to hear. I said, Renata, I went to high school with the woman who runs that intake desk. We were at Crenshaw High together in 1993. She is a good person. She is also one human being, and she has, last I heard, a backlog of about 11,000 referrals. This will sit at the bottom of that pile for a year. It will sit there for a year while $4,300 a month times 847 beneficiaries times 12 months runs through the system. That is $44 million a month, Renata. It is $500 million in a year that this ring will have stolen by the time DHCS writes me back to confirm that my referral has been logged into their tracking system. Renata said, Marcus, the Vital Records Office is not the office that solves this. We are the office that files the deaths. Once we file them correctly, the rest of the system has to do its job. If the rest of the system is failing, that is a state-level policy problem, and it requires a state-level policy response. It does not require us to step outside our lane. Please, send the referral. Document it. If DHCS does not respond within 90 days, follow up. If they do not respond within 180 days, you can come back to me, and we can talk about whether there is any escalation pathway through interagency channels. But please, do not get yourself in trouble by stepping outside what we are. I sat for a moment. I closed the folder. I said, Renata, I appreciate the conversation. Thank you for taking the time. I will send the referral. Renata said, Marcus, I really am sorry about your aunt. If there is anything I can do, please let me know. She stood up. She picked up her own folder. She walked back to her office. I sat at the break room table for another minute. Then I picked up my folder. I walked back to my cubicle. I sat down. I drafted the Interagency Referral Memorandum to DHCS Medi-Cal Program Integrity Division. I attached a redacted summary of the cross-match results. I attached Vital Statistics Form number 9 for my aunt as an exhibit. I sent it that afternoon at 4:10. I received an automatic acknowledgement within 5 minutes. I went home that evening. I did not tell Yuri about the meeting yet. I needed to think. I want to say something here about Renata. She was not wrong. I want to be clear about that. She was wrong about whether the referral path was going to work in any reasonable time frame, but she was not wrong about the scope question. The Vital Records Office does have a narrow mission, and there is a real institutional reason to keep it narrow. If I had been her in her chair, hearing what she heard from me, I might have said exactly what she said. I have thought about that conversation for 16 months. I still think about it. I think Renata was a good supervisor, taking a principled position on a question about which reasonable people can disagree, in a way that turned out to be wrong about the timing and right about the principle. The hard thing about institutional ethics is that they can be defensible in the abstract and disastrous in the specific. The hard thing about a personal stake is that it makes you willing to step outside the abstract in ways you would not have stepped a year earlier, when there was no name in the file that you had carried on her hip through a school cafeteria when you were 3. I do not blame Renata for her position. I never have. I just disagreed with her about what to do next. By the following Tuesday, I had 847 names. By the Tuesday after that, I had a plan. Act 7. 847. Between the 14th and the 22nd of November 2024, I expanded the cross-match audit. I ran the query against the full Vital Records archive going back to January of 2018, about 70 months of indexed deaths. I let the query run overnight twice because the server I had access to was not powerful enough to handle that volume in a single business day. The combined, unduplicated total was 847 names. 791 were associated with one of the 14 hospice provider LLCs from the previous week. 56 were associated with other entities, durable medical equipment companies, home health agencies, small adult daycare programs. Those 56 I set aside. The 791 became the heart of the dossier. I needed to know where the Social Security numbers were coming from. The 847 names had all died in Los Angeles County, but their Social Security numbers had been issued in different states. About 540 had California numbers. The next largest categories were Texas, Florida, and Georgia, accounting for 112, 87, and 49 respectively. Other states accounted for the remaining 59. I knew there had been 3 significant data breaches involving state Medicaid systems in the 18 months prior. The Texas Health and Human Services Commission breach of March 2023, 3.1 million records. The Florida Agency for Healthcare Administration breach of August 2023, 1.8 million records. The Georgia Department of Community Health breach of February 2024, 940,000 records. I had a personal subscription costing $89 per month to a commercial service that allowed enterprise users to query a redacted hashed SSN against published breach catalogs. I used it over 3 evenings to test each of my 847 Social Security numbers. 612 appeared in at least one of the 3 breach catalogs. The match rate was 72%. That was the other half of the story. The Ring was buying lists from the dark web, filtering for individuals who had subsequently died in Los Angeles County, enrolling those Social Security numbers through the Covered California portal as new Medi-Cal beneficiaries with addresses inside Los Angeles County, and assigning them to one of the 14 shell hospices as the stated provider of end-of-life care. The hospices were billing for services that were not being rendered because the patients were not alive. The combined monthly billing rate per enrollee averaged around $4,300 across the 14 entities. Multiply by 950 active enrollments at peak, and you get just over $4 million per month. Multiply by 30 months across the 14 entities, and you arrive in the neighborhood of $267 million billed to Medi-Cal between October of 2022 and the autumn of 2024. I had what I needed. The 847 names, the 14 hospice corporations, the 6 zip codes, the 72% breach reconciliation, The timing distribution showing a median of 4.7 days between the indexing of a Los Angeles County death and the appearance of the same Social Security number as a new covered California enrollment, with a standard deviation tight enough to rule out coincidence. The corporate registration pattern from the Secretary of State, the agent for service clusters in Glendale and Pasadena. Everything I needed for someone at the appropriate agency to take a serious look. What I did not have was a way to get it into the hands of someone who would. That was the next problem. Act 8. The kitchen table decision. The decision to compile the binder and to walk it personally to the California Department of Justice was made at our kitchen table on the night of Saturday, the 23rd of November, 2024, at approximately 11:14 p.m. I am specific about the time because I looked at the wall clock when I made the decision, and because some decisions are stamped into your memory with the time visible. I had been at the kitchen table with my laptop and a cup of decaf, going over the cross-match data for the third time that week. The 847 names spread across 2 stacks of printouts. At about 10:30, Yuri came into the kitchen. She looked at the stacks of paper. She said, "Marcus, I have been watching you do this for 2 weeks. I have not asked. I want to ask now. What are you going to do?" I said, "Yuri, I do not know yet. I had a meeting with Renata last Thursday. She told me to file an interagency referral with the state. I have done that. I do not believe it is going to lead to anything in any reasonable time. The state is buried. By the time they look at this, the ring will have billed another $500 million. I'm thinking about taking the dossier directly to the California Department of Justice. There is a Medi-Cal fraud strike force in the Los Angeles office. I know the special agent in charge of intake there. Her name is Yetunde Oloruntemehin Pratt. I think she would take a walk-in seriously if I could put together a tight enough binder." Yuri sat down opposite me. She said, "Marcus, is there a risk?" I said, "The legal risk is small. The cross-match itself is permitted under Vital Records Authority. The political risk is real. If Renata finds out I went around her to DOJ, she will be upset, and that will affect my standing. The career risk is moderate. I might not get the next promotion. The personal risk is what I am trying to think through. There is a chance that if I do this, my name comes up somewhere, and that some reporter or defense attorney decides to make me part of a public story. I do not want that. I do not want our daughters to read about their father in a newspaper. I want to remain who I am, which is a clerk who files deaths in the county of Los Angeles. If I can do that, and also get the 847 names off an active billing roster, I will. If it becomes a choice between the two, I am not sure what I will do." Yuri said, "Marcus, what would Aunt Naomi want?" I sat for a long second. I looked at the rooster-shaped salt shaker on the counter that had been in the same spot since 1974. I said, "Yuri, she would not want her name on someone else's bill. She also would not want me to make myself the story. She would want me to do my job and to do it in a way that nobody knows my name afterwards. That is what she would want." Yuri said, "Then that is the standard. Take the binder to the woman at DOJ, walk it in, hand it to her. Do not put your name on the cover letter beyond what is required. Do not give a press interview. Do not write anything publicly about it, ever. Hand it over and come home. Your job ends when the binder is delivered. Now please put the printouts away. The kitchen table is not a war room. It is the kitchen table. We need it for breakfast." I looked at the wall clock. 11:14. I said, "All right, I will bind it over Thanksgiving weekend. I will deliver it on Monday, the 2nd of December. I will not say anything to Renata in advance." Yuri kissed the top of my head. She said, "Marcus, please come to bed. The 847 dead people will still be 847 dead people on Sunday morning." I put the laptop in the lockbox. I came up, I brushed my teeth, I went to bed. From down the hall, I could hear Adeze playing a slow scale on her saxophone, very quietly, with a soft rag in the bell, the way I had taught her for late-night practice. I lay awake for about 40 minutes. I thought about Aunt Naomi's hands, the way she would hold a soup ladle and tap the rim against the pot twice before filling my bowl, always the same 2 taps. I started drafting the cover letter in my head. I fell asleep at some point. Act 9, Maple Avenue. I bound the binder at the kitchen table on Friday the 29th and Saturday the 30th of November. I worked in 2-hour stretches between family activities. The cover was black cardstock from a craft store on La Brea. I did not put a title on it. I used a 3-ring punch and a heavy-gauge plastic comb spine. The pages were white 24-pound paper. The total page count was 184. Cover letter, 1 page. Executive summary, 3 pages. Master table of the 847 names, 89 pages. 14 hospice corporate profiles, 28 pages. Geographic clustering map, 1 page, drawn by hand on a printout of an LA County zip code map. Cross-state breach reconciliation appendix, 47 pages. Statistical methodology appendix, 15 pages, including a brief note about Carlos Tragon-Young's 2010 origin of the office practice. I included Carlos because the practice was institutional, not idiosyncratic, and because he deserved to be in the binder. I added 1 final page at the back, a single sentence. If you need me, my number is below. After the work is done, I will not need to be found. The cover letter was 3 paragraphs. The 3rd paragraph was the only personal part. It said, "My predecessor in this office, Carlos Tragon-Young, told me on his retirement day in August of 2010 to watch the gap between the death index and the Medi-Cal enrollment system. He said the gap was where the money lived. I have watched it for 16 years. 847 names have fallen into it. One of those names is my paternal aunt, Naomi Pearl Tilford-Branham, who died at the age of 73 at Centinela Hospital in Inglewood on the 14th of March 2018, and whose death certificate I personally indexed 2 days later. 6 years and 8 months after her death, the state of California is paying $4,300 per month for her hospice care. She rests at Inglewood Park Cemetery beside her husband, who has been waiting for her there since October of 1971. I am asking the California Department of Justice to look at the rest of the 846 names, because somewhere in those 846 is somebody else's aunt. I am at your service. I will not seek public credit. I am a clerk. I file deaths. Thank you for your time." I drove the binder to the State Justice Building in downtown Los Angeles on Monday, the 2nd of December, 2024, at 11:30 in the morning. I had taken the morning off as personal leave. I had told Renata only that I had a personal medical appointment, which was true in the sense that the dossier itself was a kind of treatment for a wound that had been opened on the 12th of November. I parked at a meter on Main Street. I walked 4 blocks. I was wearing a navy blue suit I had owned for 11 years, a white dress shirt, and a charcoal gray tie. I carried the binder in a brown paper grocery bag because I did not want to walk through the building with a black binder visible. I asked the lobby security officer for Special Agent Yetunde Oloruntomin Pratt of the Medi-Cal Fraud Strike Force. I sat on a vinyl bench beside a potted ficus for about 11 minutes. Then, a woman came down the elevator. She was in her early 50s, taller than me, dressed in a charcoal pantsuit and a maroon blouse, badge clipped to her belt. We had met twice before on small, unrelated matters. We shook hands. She said, "Mr. Tilford-Branham, what can I do for you today?" I said, "Special Agent Oloruntomin Pratt, I have a dossier I would like you to read. I am bringing it to you in person rather than through the standard intake portal because I think what is in it is going to matter, and because I wanted you to know I think that. I'm going to give you the dossier and leave. After you read it, if you have questions, please call me. My number is on the last page. If you decide it is useful, proceed in whatever way you think is appropriate. I am not asking for acknowledgement. I am not seeking any credit. I am asking only that the dossier be read." She looked at me. She said, Mr. Tilford-Branham, most of what comes through this office comes through the intake portal. We get mailed things every day. We get walk-in referrals from licensed professionals about once a week. We get walk-in referrals from public agency records officers about once every 2 years. You have brought me a binder in a paper bag. She lifted the bag. She said, "This is a serious binder. I will read it tonight. If it is what you say it is, you will hear from me. If it is not, you will not hear from me, and I will not hold it against you. Either way, thank you for walking it in. That is not a small thing. Most people do not." She turned at the elevator. She said, "Mr. Tilford-Branham, I am sorry about whoever is in there that made you do this." "I do not need you to tell me who. I just want you to know I am sorry." The elevator door closed. I drove home. I made a sandwich. I returned to the office at 2 and worked the rest of the day. I did not tell anyone. By Wednesday, the 18th of December, I had received a form letter from the DHCS Medi-Cal Program Integrity Division in Sacramento confirming receipt of my interagency referral memorandum from the previous month. The form letter said my concern had been logged and that a senior analyst would reach out within 90 days. That was the last communication I would receive from DHCS Sacramento for the next 16 months. Act 10, the Plaque. The Vital Records Office held its annual Records Excellence Award ceremony on the afternoon of Thursday, the 16th of January, 2025, in the basement multipurpose room of the Department of Public Health building on Maple Avenue. The basement multipurpose room is approximately 1,200 square feet, with vinyl tile flooring, drop ceiling acoustic tiles that have not been replaced since the late 1990s, and 4 rows of folding chairs facing a small lectern with a county seal on the front. The fluorescent overhead lighting flickers in the back left corner, where the same fixture has needed replacement for 8 years and has not been replaced because the building services request has been in the queue at a low priority since the request was submitted in 2017. There was a sheet cake from the Vaughn's Supermarket on Adams Boulevard. There was coffee from the urn that the Vital Records Office brings out for any event involving more than 15 people. There were about 60 employees in attendance, drawn from the indexing office, the public lobby, and the analytics services unit on the 4th floor. Renata gave a short speech of about 8 minutes in which she thanked the staff of the Vital Records Office for their dedication, professionalism, and exceptional indexing accuracy in 2024. She said that the office had achieved a department-wide indexing accuracy rate of 99.93% for the year, which was the highest in the recorded history of the Department of Public Health, going back to 1972. She said that this was not a small achievement and that it represented the cumulative care of every clerk in the room. Then she announced the individual recognition awards. There were 3. The first went to Beverly Nguyen Whitaker, who was given a lucite plaque for 31 years of continuous service. The second went to a younger clerk named Dario Esposito Miquel, who had completed a particularly difficult records reconciliation project over the previous summer, involving the consolidation of duplicate records from a defunct private hospital that had closed in 2004 and whose paper records had been transferred to the county only in 2023 after a long probate dispute. The third went to me, for 16 years of impeccable indexing accuracy at a personal rate of 99.94%. The lucite plaque was about 5 inches by 7 inches, with my name engraved in black on a small metal nameplate near the bottom, and with the words, Records Excellence Award, in larger engraving across the upper third, and with the year 2024 engraved at the top. I stood up when my name was called. I walked to the lectern. Renata handed me the plaque. The deputy bureau chief's nephew, who was a 19-year-old summer intern named Jordan, took a photograph of Renata handing me the plaque with a small digital camera. I shook Renata's hand. I returned to my chair. I held the plaque in my lap during the rest of the ceremony, which lasted about another 15 minutes, and concluded with Renata thanking everyone again and inviting people to enjoy the cake. I had a small piece of cake. I did not have coffee. I returned to my cubicle on the 3rd floor at 3:47 in the afternoon. I opened the lower right drawer of my desk. I lifted out the manila envelope marked Aunt Naomi Original Proof. I set the envelope on the desk. I placed the lucite plaque in the bottom of the drawer. I placed the manila envelope on top of the plaque. I closed the drawer. I went back to indexing the deaths that had come in over the lunch hour. That evening, I drove home down La Brea Avenue. La Brea Avenue runs roughly north-south through the heart of Los Angeles, from the Hollywood Hills down through Mid-City and West Adams, and the Crenshaw District and West Park Mesa, and finally into Inglewood. From the Department of Public Health building on Maple Avenue downtown, my drive to View Park Windsor Hills takes me west on Olympic Boulevard, then south on La Brea, for about 45 minutes in light traffic and considerably longer in the rush hour. At the intersection of La Brea and Adams, which is in West Adams, there is a small storefront on the southwest corner that has changed tenants every 2 or 3 years for as long as I've been driving past it. In 2021, it was a vape shop. In 2023, it was a tax preparation service. In 2024, it was vacant with a for lease sign in the window. As I passed it that evening, in the gathering dark, I noticed for the first time that the address on the for lease sign matched the registered street address of one of the 14 shell hospice corporations. I had memorized the addresses 2 months earlier. The storefront was registered as the corporate office of Sycamore Vista Hospice Group LLC, which had been billing Medi-Cal at the rate of approximately $320,000 per month for about 11 months. The storefront was empty. There was no signage. There were no employees. There was no phone line. The corporate office of a Medi-Cal hospice billing agency that had taken in $3.5 million over the previous year was a vacant retail unit on La Brea and Adams with a for lease sign in the window. I drove past it. I continued home. I parked the car. I went inside. Yuri was at the stove making an oxtail dish from my mother's recipe, which she made on Thursday evenings when she was home and in a particular mood. I sat down at the kitchen table. Yuri said, "How was the ceremony?" I said, "I got a plaque." For 16 years of 99.94% accuracy. Yuri said, "Marcus, that is wonderful. I am proud of you." I said, "Yuri, I want to tell you what the plaque is. The plaque is recognition for the accuracy of the work that the ring is exploiting. The accuracy of our index is the infrastructure of their fraud. They are using the precision with which I file deaths in order to bill $4,300 a month for hospice care to people I have personally certified as deceased. The plaque is, in the language of the building, a thank you note from the people who are billing for my aunt. Renata does not understand that. Nobody at the Department of Public Health understands that. Nobody at the ceremony understood that. They were all sincere. They were giving me a sincere recognition for sincere work. And the work is the infrastructure of the theft. I do not know what to do with that." Yuri turned off the burner. She set the wooden spoon on the spoon rest beside the stove. She walked over to the kitchen table. She sat down. She said, "Marcus, the work is good work. The plaque is honest. The ring is exploiting it because the work is good. If the work were bad, the ring would not be able to exploit it because they would not be able to trust the index. The plaque is what it says it is. The ring is what it is. The two things are not the same thing. The plaque is from people who do not know about the ring. They cannot give you a plaque for the ring because they do not know about the ring. And because if they did know about the ring, they would not be able to give you a plaque for it, because that work is being done by the woman at the Department of Justice, and you have not been given permission to take credit for it. You took the plaque. You did not refuse it. That was the right thing to do. If you had refused it, somebody would have asked questions, and you do not want questions. You want the binder to do its work. The plaque is in the drawer. The binder is at the Department of Justice. Both things are true at the same time. You ate a piece of cake. You said thank you. You came home. You are home. Eat your dinner. Tomorrow is Friday. The girls have a half day. We have to figure out what to do with them in the afternoon. I ate my dinner. I helped Yuri clean up. I read with Adeze for 30 minutes, a young adult novel about a girl in 1880 Cuba. I read 3 chapters of a history of the Pullman Porters that I had picked up at the used bookstore on Crenshaw and Slauson the previous Saturday. I went to bed at 10:40. I lay awake for an hour. I thought about Carlos. I thought about Aunt Naomi. I thought about Yuri. I thought about Renata. I thought about the empty storefront on La Brea and Adams. I fell asleep around midnight. I dreamed about a paper file that would not fit into a drawer. I woke up at 5:45. I went to work. The next 16 months, from the 17th of January 2025 until the 9th of April 2026, were the longest 16 months of my professional life. I want to tell you what they were, because the 16 months are the load-bearing structure of the story. And most of what people remember about a fraud bust is the press conference at the end. But the 16 months are where the work actually was. I ran the cross match every Tuesday and Friday morning, the way I had been running it for 14 years before the discovery, and the way I have continued to run it since. The 847 number grew, as I expected it would. By the end of January, it was 874. By March, it was 891. By June, it had reached 904. The growth slowed in late summer of 2025 and stopped entirely in early September. After September of 2025, the number stayed flat at 904 for the rest of the period. I did not know what that meant at the time. I learned later. The flat number from September 2025 forward meant that the ring had stopped enrolling new beneficiaries. They had stopped because they had figured out that something was wrong. They did not yet know what was wrong, but they had felt enough heat in the underlying system to pause the operation. That heat, although I could not see it at the time, was Yetunde Oloruntimahin Pratt and the Medi-Cal Fraud Strike Force doing their work. I did not hear from Special Agent Oloruntimahin Pratt during this period until October of 2025, when she called me at my office on a Thursday afternoon at 3:12. The call lasted 47 seconds. She said, "Mr. Tilford-Branham, the binder has been useful. I cannot tell you anything else. Thank you for walking it in." I said, "Thank you for taking the call, Special Agent." She said, "I will be in touch when I can be." We hung up. I went home that night. I told Yuri. Yuri said, "Good." We did not discuss it again. The next morning, I ran the Tuesday cross match. The number was 904. It had not moved. I went on with my work. In the gap between the binder delivery in December of 2024 and the press conference in April of 2026, normal life continued. My father turned 83 on the 4th of July. My mother fell and broke her right hip in November and recovered through 4 months of in-home physical therapy. Adeze played her first jazz band recital. Imani was admitted to the National Speech and Debate Tournament. Yuri's mother came up from Guadalajara for 2 weeks. The dog next door had puppies. Life went on. The binder was not visible in our house. We did not talk about it. The binder was at the Department of Justice. Yetunde was reading it. Other people were doing their work. I was doing mine. Act 11. Operation Skip Trace. On Tuesday, the 17th of March, 2026, I learned from the Los Angeles Times that 21 arrest warrants had been served on Sunday the 15th and Monday the 16th of March across Los Angeles County in connection with what the article described as a hospice billing fraud ring of unprecedented scale. The article was on the front page of the Metro section. The headline read, "21 arrested in $267 million hospice fraud ring." The byline was a reporter I did not know. The article quoted a spokesperson for the California Attorney General's office who confirmed that an indictment had been unsealed on the previous Friday and that the simultaneous arrest operation had been conducted in coordination with the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, the United States Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General, and the FBI Cyber Forensics Unit. The article named the principal defendant as Yelena Marisol Krasniki-Baradze, age 47, of Glendale, the alleged organizer of the ring. It named the technical defendant as Lazar Tutungian Dorian, age 52, of Pasadena, the alleged designer of the data pipeline that converted dark web-purchased Social Security numbers into covered California Medi-Cal enrollments. It listed the names of the other 19 defendants, who were all described as owners of record or principal officers of 14 shell hospice corporations operating in 6 Los Angeles County zip codes. The article said the ring had billed $267 million to the state of California Medi-Cal program over a 30-month period, and that approximately $93 million had been paid out before the operation was disrupted. The article did not mention me. The article did not mention the Vital Records Office. The article did not mention my aunt. I read the article 3 times. I folded the newspaper. I poured a second cup of coffee. I drank it. I drove to work. I ran the Tuesday cross match. The number was still 904. It did not move. I did not say anything to Renata that morning. I did not say anything to Renata for the next 3 weeks. The press conference was scheduled for Thursday, the 9th of April, 2026, at the State Justice Building in downtown Sacramento. California Attorney General Rob Bonta presided. The press conference was streamed live on the Attorney General's official YouTube channel and on the websites of all the major California news outlets. I watched it on my phone, in the third-floor break room of the Department of Public Health building on Maple Avenue, between 2:15 and 2:47 in the afternoon. Bonta announced the unsealing of the indictment, summarized the scope of the alleged fraud, named the 21 defendants, listed the charges, and credited the partner agencies. The agencies he named were the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, the California Department of Justice Medi-Cal Fraud Strike Force, the United States Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General, the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Cybercrime Division, the Texas Office of the Attorney General for Breach Reconciliation Cooperation, the Florida Agency for Healthcare Administration Office of Inspector General, the Georgia Department of Community Health, the Department of Homeland Security Cyber Forensic Support, and the Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation Division. He did not name the Vital Records Office of the County of Los Angeles. He did not name me. Bonta took questions for about 12 minutes at the end of the press conference. One reporter asked how the ring had been initially identified. Bonta said, "The initial referral that led to this investigation came from a county records professional who walked the underlying analysis into our Los Angeles office in late 2024. He paused. He said, "The referral was high quality. We followed it." He moved to the next question. He did not say more. He did not name me. He did not need to. I had not asked to be named. The phrasing he used was the phrasing I would have written for him myself if he had asked me to write it. I walked back to my desk at 2:47. I sat down. There was a text message on my phone from Yuri. The text said, "Marcus, did they say your name?" I texted back, "No." "That is right. They should not have." Yuri texted, "Are you okay?" I texted, "I am okay. I love you. I will be home at 5:30. Yuri texted, "I love you. I'm going to make pozole. Adeze wants to watch the Lakers tonight." I texted, "The Lakers are going to lose tonight. They have lost 6 in a row." Yuri texted, "Then we will eat pozole and be sad about the Lakers together." I closed the phone. I returned to the indexing queue. I had 4 overnight referrals to process before the end of the day. I processed them. I filed 3 death certificates. I logged out at 5:07. I drove home down La Brea Avenue. I passed the storefront on La Brea and Adams. The "For Lease" sign was still in the window. On Friday, the 11th of April, in the interoffice mail of the Department of Public Health, there was a small envelope addressed to me. The envelope was on California Department of Justice letterhead. I opened it at my desk. Inside was a single-page letter, signed by Chief Deputy Attorney General Lorraine Mukasa Verstraeten on behalf of Attorney General Rob Bonta. The letter was 3 sentences long. It said, "On behalf of the California Attorney General, we wish to acknowledge your role in the successful resolution of the matter announced on April 9th. Your professionalism, your discretion, and the quality of the materials you provided were essential to this outcome. Please accept our gratitude." There was a handwritten line beneath the printed paragraph in black ink that read, "Mr. Tilford-Branham, you walked it in. That mattered. Yetunde said to tell you the 93 million is not getting fully recovered, but we will make a serious attempt. Be well." The handwritten line was signed Y.O.P. I read the letter twice. I folded it. I placed it in the breast pocket of my dress shirt. I continued working until 5 o'clock. I drove home down La Brea. I did not show the letter to anyone that evening. I waited until Saturday. Act 12, Inglewood Park. On Saturday, the 13th of April, 2026, at 8:47 in the evening, in the kitchen of our house in View Park, Windsor Hills, I gave the letter to Yuri. She was at the stove finishing pozole rojo, which we had decided to make even though Saturday was traditionally pozole night only when Yuri was on rotation, because the press conference and the letter had made the previous week feel like a Saturday that had earned a pozole. Imani was at the dining table reading an advanced placement United States history textbook chapter on the New Deal. Adeze was at the dining table doing pre-algebra homework in a green spiral notebook. The kitchen radio was playing KJLH, the FM station that has played continuously in the kitchens of Crenshaw District homes since I was a child, and which my father has played in his kitchen since 1973. I took the letter out of the envelope. I gave it to Yuri. I said, "Yuri, this came on Friday. I want you to read it." Yuri set the wooden spoon on the spoon rest. She wiped her hands on a dish towel. She took the letter. She read it slowly, her lips moving slightly, the way she reads when she is taking something seriously. She read the printed paragraph. She read the handwritten line. When she finished, she folded the letter once. She handed it back to me. She said, "Marcus, they wrote you a letter." I said, "Yes." She said, "They did the right thing. The letter is the right size. They said the right things. The handwritten line is from the woman you walked the binder into." She remembered. She made sure they wrote the letter. She wanted you to know they would not get all the money back, and that she was sorry about that. I said, "Yes, that is what the line is." Adeze, without looking up from her math, said, "Daddy, what is in the letter?" I said, "Baby, the letter is from a woman at the state government in Sacramento. She wrote to thank Daddy for some work I did on a project at the office." Adeze said, "What kind of project?" I said, "Baby, Daddy works in an office that files paperwork when somebody dies." About a year and a half ago, I noticed that some paperwork at another office had not been kept correctly, and I told the right people about it. The letter is to say thank you for noticing. Adeze said, "Was it Auntie Naomi?" I sat for a second. I looked at Yuri. Yuri looked at me. She nodded once, slightly. I said, "Baby, yes. Some of it was about Auntie Naomi." Adeze said, "Oh." Then she said, "Did you fix it?" I said, "Baby, yes. I helped fix it. Other people did most of the work, but I did help." Adeze said, "Good." She put her pencil down. She came over. She hugged me. She said, "Daddy, I am sorry about Auntie Naomi." I said, "Baby, I know. Thank you." She returned to her chair. She picked up her pencil. She continued her pre-algebra homework. Imani had been listening from the dining table. She said, "Dad, was it the hospice fraud thing?" I said, "Sweetheart, yes." Imani said, "The LA Times article you were reading on Tuesday." I said, "Yes." Imani said, "The one where they did not name the source." I said, "Yes." Imani said, "That was you." I said, "Sweetheart, it was a number of people. I was one of them." Imani said, "Dad, can I tell my debate coach?" I said, "Sweetheart, no. I would prefer that you not tell anyone." The reason they did not name the source is because the source asked not to be named. I am the source. I asked not to be named. I would like to remain not named. Do you understand why? Imani said, "Yes, I understand." I said, "Sweetheart, thank you." Imani went back to reading her textbook. Yuri stood up from the table. She walked behind my chair. She put a hand on my shoulder for 1 second. She kissed the top of my head. She did not say anything. She walked back to the stove. She picked up the wooden spoon. She stirred the pozole. She lifted out a small piece of pork on the end of the spoon. She blew on it. She tasted it. She added a small amount of salt. She continued stirring. Adeze said, "Mom, when is the pozole going to be ready?" Yuri said, "Baby, 20 more minutes." Adeze said, "Mom, can I have a small bowl now?" Yuri said, "Baby, no, you may not. 20 minutes." Adeze said, "20 minutes is forever." Yuri said, "Baby, 20 minutes is 20 minutes." I sat at the kitchen table. I held the letter in my hands. The room was loud. The refrigerator hummed. The dishwasher was running. Adeze was tapping her pencil against the dining table. Imani was turning a page in her textbook. KJLH was playing a song from the late 1970s that I half remembered from my childhood. The kitchen smelled of pork and chilies and oregano and the small piece of bread Yuri had toasted to put on the side. The room was full. The room was quiet in the way that a room can be quiet when it is full of the people you love, who are doing the things they do every evening, and who are not asking you to be anyone other than the man who came home at 5:30 and gave his wife a letter in a kitchen with butter yellow walls. I placed the letter on the kitchen counter beside the rooster-shaped salt shaker that had been Aunt Naomi's since 1974. I left the letter there for the rest of the evening. After dinner, I read with Adeze for 20 minutes. After Adeze went to bed, I sat on the couch beside Yuri and we watched the Lakers lose to the Denver Nuggets by a final score of 118 to 109. After the game, Yuri went to bed. I sat at the kitchen table for another 20 minutes. I opened the letter again. I read it. I folded it. I put it in the Aunt Naomi original proof envelope in the lower right drawer of my desk, which I had brought home that Friday because I wanted the letter to be in the drawer with the original certificate. I closed the drawer. I went to bed. On the second Sunday in September of 2026, on the afternoon of the 14th, at 4:18 p.m., I drove alone to Inglewood Park Cemetery. I parked at the visitor lot at the south end of the cemetery. I walked north past the Rose Garden, past the Garden of Reflection, past the Last Supper monument that has been there since 1960, to Section H, and to Plot 412, where my aunt rests beside her husband Earl. The headstone is a single granite marker that reads, Naomi Pearl Tilford-Branham, 1944-1918, beloved sister and aunt. To the left on Earl's headstone are the words Earl Tilford, 1935-1971, beloved husband. I stood at the headstones for 75 seconds. I did not bring flowers. I did not bring a plaque. I did not bring the letter. I had brought nothing. I said, in a voice nobody else could hear, Auntie Naomi, you can rest now. They had you working a job you didn't sign up for. I closed the books. I turned. I walked back to my car. I drove home down Manchester Boulevard. I made the left on La Brea. I passed the storefront on La Brea and Adams. The For Lease sign had been replaced with a new sign that read, Coming soon, coffee bar, summer opening. I pulled into our driveway in View Park, Windsor Hills at 5:11. Yuri was in the kitchen. The pozole rojo was on the stove for a second time that year. Adeze was on the couch with the television tuned to the Lakers, who were starting their preseason game against the Phoenix Suns. The Lakers won that game by 12 points. We ate pozole. I did not mention the cemetery to Yuri or to the girls that evening. I have not mentioned it to them since. I do not plan to mention it to them. I want to close this telling with one more thing. My aunt did not die because of Medi-Cal. She died because hearts get tired after 73 years of doing what hearts do. Medi-Cal failed her after she was already gone by leaving the door open for someone to put her name back on a ledger she had already left. That is a different kind of failure than the kind of failure that kills a person. It is the failure of two government systems pretending they cannot speak to each other. I spent 16 months teaching them to speak. I did not get my name in the paper. I did not get my name on the indictment. I did not need either. The names that needed to come back to silence, 847 of them, came back to silence. The index is clean. The drawer in my desk has my aunt's original certificate, and now it has a small lucite plaque on top of it that says, I am 99.94% accurate. And that is, in its own way, the truth. I am 99.94% accurate. The other 0.06% is the people whose deaths I could not stop being used. I am working on that number. I expect to be working on it for the rest of my career. And when my time comes, I expect somebody at this same desk to file my form and to check, 6 months later, that nobody is using my name to bill anything anywhere. That is the trust. That is what we owe the dead. My name is Marcus Tilford-Branham. I am a clerk. I file deaths. That is enough.